Recognize Umbral Walker D01. Recognize the Caleb G D02.
Hello, team. Thanks for listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, episode 20. Welcome to the cave. I am everyone's favorite sidekick, Caleb, and don't you laugh. Please allow me to introduce Rich. Dude, you totally left me hanging. Howard!
Did I? I probably did.
Thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of Whelmed. We truly appreciate you spending time with us today. If you would like to get a hold of us, you can find us on Twitter at the YJ Files. You can email the show, whelmedpodcasts@gmail.com. And of course, our website is crashingthemode.com.
No, please, stop.
Love you? I can't even look at you. Oh, but you wouldn't do to prevent that now, right?
That's right.
Now, my pretty. I know you don't want to do anything you'll regret.
You don't know me at all.
With that housekeeping out of the way, I will turn things over to Rich for...
Hello, Megan.
Title of our episode this week is Image. The release date was March 17th, 2012. The previous episode was the week before, March 10th. The in-episode date is November 22nd. The director was Jay Oliva, and the writer was Nicole Dubuque.
We also got some fun special voice actors here. Mr. Alan Tudyk showed up. Mariana Sirtis showed up. And show and voice actor favorite Kevin Michael Richardson showed up as well.
Yeah.
And with that, let's move right over to our mission briefing.
Just in time for your next mission.
So, in our pre-credit scene, Green Arrow... Sorry, this scene cracks me up. Green Arrow and Black Canary enter the cave at Batman's request to review a security video of Connor sparring with Canary. At the end of the spar, Canary tells Connor, "You deserve a reward," and plants a big old kiss on him. We quickly find out that this Canary is actually a shape-changed McGann. We learn from Manhunter that this kind of interaction among a race of shapeshifters, telepathic shapeshifters, is common, and he's convinced McGann meant no harm.
The exchange between Green Arrow and Canary is priceless.
It's pretty funny, yeah.
Canary confronts McGann in her room, where McGann is watching a TV show featuring a girl that looks just like her in a cheerleader outfit, using the catchphrase, "Hello, Megan."
Shocking.
Shocking. Canary explains why that game isn't appropriate for Earth culture. It becomes a discussion about identity.
Then Batman calls the team together for a mission briefing. President Harjafti of Karak has suddenly and inexplicably allied himself with Queen Bee, the dictatorial leader of the neighboring country of Bialya. Harjafti backs Queen Bee's claim that the two countries were once one in ancient times and has silenced the press, undermined legitimate protests, and is allowing the Bialyan military to enforce martial law within Karaki borders. Batman suspects Harjafti is being mind-controlled, but Queen Bee hasn't left Bialya, so he sends the team under the leadership of Robin in to investigate.
When the team arrives at the Karaki-Bialyan border, tanks are crossing the border into an animal sanctuary. The team deploys in stealth mode to save a woman and a boy from a stampede caused by the invading tanks. We find out that the woman is Marie Logan and her son is Garfield Logan. McGann helps to repair the fences destroyed by the invading army, while Superboy, Robin, and Kid Flash escort Garfield and the wounded animals back to the sanctuary.
When the boys get back to the sanctuary, Garfield drops the bomb that Miss Martian, he's amazed that she looks just like his mom when she was the star of a show called Hello, Megan, which aired way before any of them were born, had one season, and isn't available online or anywhere else. The boys are obviously surprised and confused, but Garfield tries to find a videotape of the premiere that they have somewhere in his house. Meanwhile, McGann fangirls out by meeting Marie, and then both groups are interrupted when Superboy hears incoming aircraft.
The sanctuary is attacked by 3 aerial drones. The drones blow up a gas tank next to their barn, where Garfield has let the animals go. The explosion blows Garfield into the air. McGann catches him, but he is critically wounded. Superboy and McGann then take down the drones.
Yes, with full force. I don't know what to say. Prejudice? Whatever that word is. Garfield needs a blood transfusion, but he is O negative, which is the most difficult to match. McGann says she might be able to shapeshift her blood into the appropriate blood type to help him, and while she's trying to save Garfield, the boys look for a news channel to find out what's going on in Karak, but they accidentally start the VHS recording of Hello Megan that Gar had put into the VCR earlier.
The team eventually sees a news broadcast where they notice Simon in the background of a Harjafti press conference. When the team arrives to free Harjafti, the Bialian military arrives armed with apocalyptic weapons. The military plans to murder the president, blame the team, allowing Queen Bee to rule unopposed. While the boys deal with the military threat and project Harjafti, McGann locates Simon and confronts him.
Simon and McGann battle it out psychically. Simon opens the fight by forcing McGann to take her natural Martian form, which is a horrifying white monster. The boys enter the room soon after, but McGann actually brain blasts them unconscious before they can see her in her natural form. We then find out Simon is actually recording the entire interaction, so her secret is out.
Simon and McGann then battle it out in the psychic landscape. Simon pulls McGann's fears to the surface, letting us see why she's been lying to the team, including being rejected by the League, the team, and especially Superboy. Simon thinks her role as a superhero will protect him, but to defend her secret, McGann pulls out all the stops and puts Simon into a coma.
After the team cleans up the mess between Harjafti and Queen Bee, the boys confront McGann about the videotape that they saw. She tells the team that she had a lonely childhood, but when she saw Hello Megan among the TV broadcast that Manhunter was beaming back to Mars, she connected deeply to the character of Megan. When she came to Earth and had to adopt an identity, it only made sense to her for it to be from the show. When they asked her to show them what she really looks like, though, she shifts into a variant of her green Martian form instead of the white Martian form we saw earlier. Superboy tells her pretty clearly that she doesn't have to wear a mask for him, but she makes it clear that in her mind, this is who she is.
Our final scene is McGann checking on a sleeping Garfield, finding Queen Bee in the room with him. Queen Bee makes it clear she knows what McGann really is, and says if she doesn't do what Queen Bee says, her secret will be revealed.
Dun, dun, dun.
And with that wrapped up, let's move right into Feeling the Aster.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
I have to tell everybody, by the way, I'm been fighting sickness for a while, which you probably heard in an Intel update way before this got released. So it's that same day we record that Intel update. So the next few episodes, I'm going to be very, very manly with my voice.
Well, it just goes perfectly with that fantastic jungle adventure we also know and love.
All right, man. There's some Aster in here, man. There's a lot of Aster in this.
This was a great payoff episode.
It really was.
Yeah, seeing how everything finally came together with all the hints about the television show and who McGann really is this whole time. This is the episode where now you can go back and say, oh, that was what was happening in that scene when Uncle Dudley turned off the television or whatnot.
Right, exactly, which didn't happen for me until the second or third watch through. I had, as I'd mentioned before, I wasn't big on McGann, and then when they had this reveal, I was like, wow, this is actually really, really good. I'm so glad that they decided to improve her background history halfway through the season. And then, of course, going back and realizing, no, I just was missing all of the hints the whole time. But there's so much, I mean, McGann is obviously a main focus of this episode. The big reveal is amazing. But there's lots of little things, too, like Robin is clearly reluctant to be leader of the team in this mission because of what happened in Failsafe, right? Aqualad's out. He's helping Aquaman with a thing. You're the next logical choice. Robin steps up and he does the job, but you can tell he's really uncomfortable about the whole thing. The turn of expectation at the end, where Simon's like, now, you wouldn't want to do anything you regret because, you're a hero or whatever. And then she completely changes character. Like, this is where we start to see McGann underneath that mask that she's been putting on this whole season. and what all of this means to her, deeply, deeply means to her. I just love it. And then everything about Garfield Marie Logan, which we'll talk about in Crashing the Mode, because that leads into a bunch of stuff into season 2. The things that really get me are the things that aren't really necessarily part of the episode. When you take a step back and looking at it from like a meta standpoint, Danica McKellar playing Miss Martian, who is a fangirl of a woman who was a child star, which Danica McKellar was as Winnie Cooper back in the day on Wonder Years. But she's playing the grown-up version. She does the voice for Marie Logan, as well as McGann's voice, right? But plus the episode itself was written by Nicole Dubuque. And Nicole Dubuque, who was also a child star in a show called Major Dad, which I used to watch all the time, but I made no connection to until Nicole, in a Twitter conversation with us, actually had mentioned it and just said, look, Greg Weisman's a man with a plan. And this kind of casting shows so much forethought and the appropriate use of your team resources. It's just amazing stuff. Like, if you're going to write an episode like this, you get someone who's experienced it and get it acted by somebody who's experienced it. It's amazing, and I think it's one of the reasons why it comes across so powerfully.
Absolutely. It was very cool seeing Danica take on all the different roles, because she has been playing McGann. She also played Megan when we saw that clip from that show.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And then she was Marie.
Where she's like, I don't know, it was a job. It's just what I did. That person was not me. And having all of those like triple personalities going on in this episode, just so cool. And James D'Amato and I talked about in our episode, we were talking about voice acting. You get Nolan North doing the voice of Superboy and Superman. You're getting Danica McKellar doing the voice of Marie Logan, she's imitating as... It's just like the voice actors go to town. Like and it isn't just like, oh, we need an extra background security guard voice. Crispin, can you throw us one of your random voices? I mean, these are all tied so tightly together into various story elements. It's just amazing.
A lot of the notes I had for this episode, we did have to move into Crashing the Mode because they are huge for later things. But there are a couple things I wanted to note here. It was great seeing another psychic fight. We've talked previously about how the show really nicely breaks down that psychic combat. It was cool seeing more tech from Apocalypse show up.
Yeah.
And this is really a Miss Martian-focused episode. And as we move deeper into Season 1, a lot of the main characters kind of get showcase episodes. We had Wally get a showcase with Cold Hearted. This episode is a lot about McGann. Robin gets a lot of screen time as we move forward. So it's kind of interesting to show how Young Justice sets up this team, sets up the family, builds this whole world, and then very late in the run takes a step back, still while moving the story forward, but breaks down each individual character, building them up based on what we've already learned about them. So it's a really, really nice way to get into character development.
Yeah, absolutely.
This episode also really starts the build of how powerful Miss Martian really is. With the psychic debacle of Failsafe, we know how crazy powerful she is with telepathy. But now we see not only is she a shape changer, but she can actually change her blood.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And she doesn't even think about those drones. It's like she's letting this kind of uplifting reserve that she puts on with this Megan personality go to get the job done. And she's clearly pissed when she slams those drones together.
Yeah.
No joke. And then you start thinking like, if she stops holding back, what is going to happen?
And we will find that out within 5 or 6 episodes. It was also great seeing all the facial reactions to Hello, Megan. Young Justice is consistently great with non-verbal reactions and explanations, and it just continues in this episode. I also loved the fact that Garfield made the connection before any of the team members did. Just in that moment of, I'm just a little 12-year-old. And that's so obvious. What's wrong with you?
Exactly. Wait, that's a TV show? I thought it was just something she just said all the time. Yeah, on the TV show.
I wrote a note down to myself here, the name of the producers in the show. I think that was a nod to the real life producers, right?
Well, what it was they took Greg Weisman and Brandon Vietti and they swapped their names. So it was Greg Vietti and Brandon Weisman. There's a bunch of names that I noticed. So I saw the producers with their names switched. And then I noticed two other names actually in the list of actors. And I was like, those names sound really familiar. And then so I went and did some research and remembered one of them. And then I went to the YJ Wiki, of course. And they just broke it all down. Like, of course, in the comics, Marie Logan was a biologist working in Africa with her husband and their son Garfield. But the character I recognized was Rita Farr. So in the comics, Rita Farr was an actress, but then she eventually becomes the character of Elastigirl in the Doom Patrol. And she's also the adoptive mother of Beast Boy in the comics. And Paul Sloan, who I think was supposed to be the actor who played Connor. In the comics, he was hired to play Two-Face in a documentary or a movie or something, but he ended up getting scarred just like Two-Face did because of some accident. Jonathan Lord and Sandra Staten, they're named after two characters of the comic Silverblade, which was another comic series by Greg Weisman's longtime writing partner, Carrie Bates. And Lord is like an elderly has-been actor who gets the superpower to turn into every movie character that he's ever played. Once again, these aren't just random names they're putting up there. It's like, oh, if we're going to use an actress, of course there's characters in the DC universe that are actresses and actors. Let's put Rita Farr on there and then see what happens. Like, does that mean Doom Patrol exists in the Young Justice universe? Probably. And man, I would love to see that series of episodes or spinoff. I love it.
It was great seeing Robin in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Of course. Seeing him being very reluctant to be in control, but still keeping people in line. There were a couple moments where Robin definitely took charge, even though he was a little hesitant about it. So just building towards what he will become as he develops.
I love there was that one little moment where Marie Logan says, I told you there would be consequences. And Robin says, there always is. You can tell like he's still getting the job done, but he's not letting go entirely of the lessons he learned in Failsafe. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's maturity, right? You're not going to let go of the lessons, but you're going to get the job done, and then you're going to process it later, right?
Yeah, again, pointing to the fact that Young Justice keeps consequences throughout the entirety of its run.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd put a note in here just about the interaction between Wally and Bruce.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember why I put that note in there, but I know it was a great note.
Because it's a great note, actually. I think you mean because Wally kept making nods to, like, sure, any friend of Bruce Wayne, right?
Oh,
Then later on, he's like, oh, Bruce Wayne showed up. It's as if maybe he knew what was happening the whole time. Nudge, nudge. And Robin's like, shut up. It's pretty funny.
Oh, good old Wally.
God, love me some Wally, I have to say.
Alrighty, so let's wrap up Feeling the Aster here. We have been bleeding the line into Crashing the Mode, so we're definitely going to hit a couple points over there. But before we do that, we do need to talk to Canary about some Canary Debrief.
Let's do it.
Stick around. Class is in session.
So the point I want to make this week in the Canary Debrief is about fulfilling promises in your story. If you present a mystery to the audience or have the audience asking certain questions at the beginning of your novel or your short story or whatever it happens to be, you need to answer all of those questions by the end, or you need to have a really good reason not to have done so. We've had a lot of nods to Megan holding something back, and this episode lays it out beautifully. And they do it by layering the release of the information. So we get an opening scene reminder of the things that we don't know, which is Megan blatantly watching an episode of Hello Megan, right? Which brings back the image of the cheerleader and then all this other stuff. It gets layered with Superboy's, but you've been only on Earth 6 months comment. It gets us to keep asking the right questions. They're kind of basically prepping our brain to receive, to be, this is what the episode is about. Yeah, there's Harjofti and there's Queen Bee and there's a bunch of metaplot stuff going on, but let's remind the watchers about where we're going with this. And then the tease about the TV show that answers a lot of questions about her appearance and her acting. And then everything gets folded into a story that still moves all that metaplot forward. It plants some seeds for future episodes and storylines we'll talk about in Crashing the Mode, and it manages to answer these questions from earlier in the season. And as we're starting to get toward the end of the season, these things need to start getting wrapped up. Some of them need to get wrapped up. Of course, you're going to want to leave some loose strings if you're doing a trilogy or a series of stories, but if you put a question in and you don't answer it by the end, or you don't tell your audience why you're not answering it by the end, then people are going to be left unsatisfied. Have people ask those questions, like we talked about with Morgan Jenkins about asking the right questions. Have your audience ask those questions, but make sure to give them some answers so that they can be satisfied with the end of the story as well. And this one does it beautifully.
Yeah, this was a fantastic payoff episode, even as we are building towards the end of season 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, let's just move right forward into Crashing the Mode.
Yeah, let's crash this mode.
Tell us something we don't know yet.
Sorry, BB. We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
As always in Crashing the Mode, we are going to be talking about spoilers specific to Young Justice, but also the larger DC universe. If you do not want to have Young Justice or anything else spoiled, stop listening and join us later. If you are still here, things are gonna get spoiled.
Garfield, baby. Beast Boy, or as I know him as Changeling, which is who he was back in the 80s. In season 2, how they tweaked his origin was brilliant. But how they folded in this idea that in the comics, he was also a child star. He had his own TV show and some other stuff in the comics as well. He was actually had quite a bit of money from that. But here they made him the son of a child star. And then in season 2, we hear him make reference to, when do I get my own reality TV show? And like all that kind of stuff. It was just a drop of genius. This idea that, okay, Changeling is green. He can shapeshift into animals, have him injured, have McGann shapeshift her blood, and then he can do the animal thing. And then they even make a nod to the whole being bitten by a green monkey, because at the end of the episode, he's sitting there and you see his eyes have changed colors, but Monkey's sitting on his shoulder and chewing on his shoulder. So, like, technically, after he got injured and received a serum to help save his life, he was bitten by a green monkey. It's basically the same as the comics, but not at all, and folded in for their own internal consistency. It's just fantastic. I loved it.
And this is a payoff that I did not realize my first time watching this through.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't. I don't think you're alone.
Because of how I watched Young Justice on Netflix. Season 1 had been there for a while. I had binged that through a couple times. And there was a huge time gap between when season 2 came out. So when season 2 finally hit Netflix, I just sat down and watched season 2, since I had watched season 1 through 3 or 4 times by that point. And there's this green dude running around turning into animals. And I'm like, hey, yeah, I know Beast Boy, cool. I did not realize that was Garfield and that was the payoff until late in season 2. I think there was at some point where they start throwing in some references to the events of this episode or the relationship with McGann.
It was actually in the first few episodes, actually. I think they were on Ran. Might have been episode 3. I have to go back and check. Where he has a flashback about his mom dying. It might have been relatively early. So he has a flashback to his mom dying, like this truck in a lake. And they actually, in the comics, show that interaction, which is pretty crazy, watching how she died, murdered by Queen Bee. It was brutal.
That was a really fun reveal when I personally finally connected, oh, this kid in this episode right now is now later on this other superhero.
Yeah.
And I think at some point in this episode, he makes a comment about being a blood brother.
Yep. Gar says that you're his blood brother, or he's your blood brother now, or something like that. You're part of the family. That kind of thing.
Speaking of Queen Bee, since you mentioned her a second ago, her scene at the end of this episode is very chilling.
Yeah.
Queen Bee is a character that doesn't get a lot of screen time in Young Justice, but when you realize who she is and how she uses her powers effectively, especially given the fact that she's working with Luthor, who is so great at manipulating people anyway,
yeah,
she is a little bit on the terrifying side.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole idea of having this, I think I mentioned this in the Miss Martian episode, specific Secret Origin episode, this idea that you have, when you have telepaths who can control minds and change memories and reprogram people and put post-hypnotic suggestions into somebody's brain. Queen Bee tells Miss Martian, if you hurt me, then Garfield is programmed to hurt himself. That's just terrifying, right? Mm-hmm. And you get it from like the Jessica Jones TV show with the Purple Man. Oh. Purple Man is one of those just ridiculous villains from the comics that they took into the real world and said, no, wait a minute. This is actually horrifying.
Easily one of the most scary, terrifying villains I've ever seen, ever, anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And David Tennant, who I adore anyway, did a brilliant job. But this kind of echoes those kinds of things, right? With Queen Bee, she can control people's minds, and you don't know if you spend any time around her. Do you know whether you're being controlled or not? Do you feel like you're justifying it? Is it like a dream where everything, even though when you wake up and you look back in the dream, it doesn't make any sense, but in the dream, everything made perfect logical sense? And like, oh my gosh, it can be just really messed up. God, poor Gar. I want to see some more of those stories about like maybe how McGann was able to maybe dig out that psychic suggestion in Gar's mind so that they could actually do something about Queen Bee and that kind of stuff. And I actually love this take on Beast Boy. I love shape changers in general. You and I have talked. I'm a big fan of like druids and rangers and D&D and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it kind of bugs me with the mass change thing. He turns from a mouse into a gorilla, and it's great for comic logic, that kind of thing. But there's definitely a part of me in the verisimilitude, like, where's this mass coming from? It's the sciencey side of me. But letting that go, man, Beast Boy's who I'd want to be. I love Beast Boy.
He is definitely the comic relief.
Yeah, and it's appropriate. He was a comic relief in the Titans too. So
in the other cartoon series, Teen Titans Go, that's the one that's been on for a little while. That whole show is comic relief, but right. He is definitely one of the goofier characters in that. But that's okay. I mean, He's a younger character. He's got this weird power compared to his other peers.
Yeah.
But going into the more science-y side of what you can do being different animals is very cool. And if I may pause for a second to pimp my other podcast and network, over on the RPG Academy, we have a show called Detention where we talk about a lot of different things. In one of those episodes, we spoke with Taylor LaBreche.
Oh, I love Taylor.
And we broke down druids, and he opened my mind to my perception of druids, specifically with shape changing, talking about how, okay, drop into a raccoon, and raccoons have more tactile senses than anything else.
Yep.
Or all these different things that he brought up. I'm not doing it justice. You should go listen to it because he was just very passionate and very informative about it. We mostly see Beast Boy transform into a few different things. He goes to the elephant when he has to smash something, or the gorilla, or a cheetah.
Right. It's a lot of combat-oriented stuff.
That's what Taylor brought up. You always think of a combat transformation shapeshifter.
Yeah.
But let's think about exploration and sensory. If we're going into tabletop role-playing games, the 3 columns, combat, exploration, and social. Druids can do a lot with exploration that we leave out because that column can be a little bit on the weaker side in a lot of games. But changing into a mouse who can not only just get into small spaces, but can sense things out or see things in a different way. There's so much that you can do, and I think that Beast Boy represents a lot of that potential. Unfortunately, this is a cartoon where combat happens, and there's a lot of action. So we're always going to see that combat lean towards what Beast Boy does, but knowing what he could potentially do is very, very cool.
Yeah, a couple points on that. Like, doing enhanced senses in an animated series is actually really difficult to do, believe it or not. But one of the shows that did it brilliantly was Wolverine and the X-Men. We talk a lot about DC Comics, man, and I bag on Marvel's animation because it's just nowhere near DC's in many cases. But Wolverine and the X-Men was freaking brilliant. One of the things that they did in there was when Wolverine walks into a room, you can see him just very subtly take a sniff, and then you see a replay of the actions in the room, right? So he doesn't know what they said or anything like that, but he knows who was where in relation to whom and who was all in the room. And it's all these ghostly figures and all this kind of stuff. It was very cool. And I could totally see them incorporating something like that with Beast Boy in the future. But to make another X-Men analogy, two of my favorite Titans and X-Men are Nightcrawler and Beast Boy. And they're very similar in psychology in many ways. These two poor guys can't really have secret identities, right? So they have to own their looks. They have to live their life knowing that they can't be something else, right? They can't just put on a hood and have it be okay. So both of these characters react in very similar ways. They're charismatic, right? They're about making friends. They're about going the extra step to be a supportive, loving person as a contradiction to the external appearance that they put out, which makes them my favorites because I love charismatic, loving, supportive characters. No one is surprised by this. But I see there's also a dark side in each of them because Kurt, Nightcrawler, had a horrifyingly abusive childhood. And Beast Boy, even though he's got this humorous exterior, it would come out in the comics every once in a while as really what it was, which was covering up a lot of pain and hurt. And they really nod to that in the second season a bit with him in that one scene where, though most of the time he walks around and he doesn't even look human, he's got like this monkey-like appearance, he flashes back on his mom's death and he immediately shape changes into Garfield. It's an external expression of his internal psychological being a child in remembering his mother's death. And it's like 30 seconds of airtime, and I freaking bawl my eyes out every time. It's so well handled with him, and you see this contradiction, because he goes from literally giggling and laughing in the scene right before that to dead stop and this flashback with tears in his eyes, and McGann climbing into his head to see what's going on and trying to figure out what's happening to him and sharing that image with him. It's just so well done.
Wrapping up here, Crashing the Mill, there's two last things we need to hit. Going back to Queen Bee for a second, that last scene there is going to be super, super important as we move towards the finale.
Yeah.
She is setting up a huge turn of events with most of the major characters on the team. That blackmail will come back in a very interesting way.
Yeah. Each of these potential moles gets their own episode to kind of wrap up their story and feed them into the finale, which I think was really well handled.
And speaking of McGann, this was obviously the big payoff for the Hello Megan bit, but there was also some stuff to talk about here with her true form and the fact that she was still kind of lying at one point in this episode. Yeah. But Connor was still telling the truth.
He was, and that line where he said, "You don't have to wear a mask around me," was so beautifully like folded in, because of course you think at the time that he's talking about this green Martian bald McGann form, but we find out later on, no, he knows that she's lying again, a second time, because from way back in the first Bialya episode, he saw her form. He knows what she really looks like, and he's waiting for her to trust him enough to and be comfortable enough and okay enough and not force it on her to reveal it when she is ready. And just so many layers to every freaking scene in line.
And that makes the eventual scene where her true White Martian form is revealed to the team in real life and everyone reacts except Connor that much better.
Absolutely.
So let us consider this mode thoroughly crashed and move on to a little bit of fan service here for the week. Rich, what do you have for us?
Let's do it. So now that we have a season 3 and hopefully beyond coming, we had, I think once again, it was Scarlet Catnip shot us a link to an artist on DeviantArt named Estrella Angel. Estrella Angel has put together a bunch of speculative costumes actually for the team into season 3 and potentially a season 4. Estrella Angel, who I'm going to refer to as a she. I think she's a she, but I'm not exactly sure, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But she has put together these costumes and also was putting together kind of a theoretical season 3 and season 4 to play into kind of the ideas of why she thought these costumes would look the way that they looked. And they're really cool. Like the season 4 Superboy costume is still echoey of like that basic just kind of cargo pants, combat boots from the first couple of seasons, but then it also incorporates a short jacket vest a little bit and some of the red colors on his shirt that he had from the comics. that we saw Mal Duncan wearing in the first season in the Halloween episode where he was like decked out in the 90s Superboy clone costume. In her time frame, she's thinking that Wally takes over the mantle of Flash because Barry then has the twins with Iris, which we find out in season 2 is going to happen, and can't be a superhero all the time anymore because he's got to actually deal with 2 super fast twins, which sounds like a nightmare to me. So Wally takes over the mantle of Flash and kind of incorporates the Kid Flash costume with the normal Flash costume. It's really cool stuff, guys. Go check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes as always, and go tell Estrella Angel how much you love the stuff.
And Estrella, if you're listening, hit us up at the YJ Files on Twitter. whelmedpodcast@gmail.com. We love talking with creators about their fan-made work. We are always looking to get more content out there shared about Young Justice and DC. So if you are making this kind of thing, if you know a creator, please get a hold of us. You can find us on social media. You can email the show or visit the website, and we will make sure to have a feature of what you are doing. And with all of that being said, I think it is time to end this mission and head out of the cave. As always, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you spending time with us. And hey, if you have a second, we appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes or the podcatcher of your choice. It means a whole lot to us, and we will definitely give you a shout out and some love on our Intel updates. So make sure you do that if you have a second. And as always, feel the Aster.
Yep, and continue with our hashtags here, guys. Hashtag Keep Binging YJ on Netflix. Hashtag YJ3 or hashtag Young Justice Season 3 if you're posting about Young Justice. You'll see me trolling that Twitter account every once in a while and liking and retweeting some interesting things people are posting there. Hashtag Buy YJ Comics on Comixology, which Greg Weisman is promoting now to try and get more tie-in Young Justice comics to get us even more stories. And if you want to help us get more episodes, more Secret Origins, more actual play podcasts, and more, please consider supporting us through our Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can help us do so much more with the show while getting some great personal rewards for yourself. And as always, stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our computer is voiced by Madison Ray. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.